Presidents are often measured by their first 100 days in office, and we are about to hit that mark. Now, it would take us far too long to list all of Donald Trump's actions, both here and abroad so far, from mass pardons to unqualified cabinet picks to deportations without due process to on again, off again tariffs. It is clearly nothing like we've ever seen before. To discuss the consequences of these actions and policies, who better than Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts? Senator Warren, great to see you. And may I call you Elizabeth, since we've
Please
known each
do.
other for a
Please
long
do.
time? So, Elizabeth, my first question is about the revelation on Sunday that uh, the head of the Defense Department, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, had actually done another signal chat uh, with details of the Yemen bombings, and it included his brother, his wife, and his personal lawyer. What
Right.
was your reaction when you heard about this second signal chat?
What is it going to take for Donald Trump to fire this guy? It is so clear that he is not ready for prime time. And look, we all knew this at the time he was originally nominated, that he was nominated principally because he was very, 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 very loyal to Donald Trump, and he looked good on television and gave a kind of rah-rah talk around defense. But the truth was, he didn't have the experience. He didn't have the background. He made it clear that he didn't think that a lot of those who were serving in the military, particularly women, belonged there and had a contribution to make. And so it was never a good idea to put this guy in. And then he comes in and literally puts our entire national defense at risk, not once, but twice that we know of. And no one is sure what else. I mean, if he thinks that it's okay to have his wife, who does not have a security clearance, to have his lawyer, who does not have a security clearance, this is hard no. This is something for which anyone who actually worked in the Department of Defense for Pete Hegseth would have been summarily fired, and everyone would have said, yeah, no kidding. That's what people get fired for. It is time for some accountability in the Department of Defense, time for Pete Hegseth to go.
But will that happen? Will there be accountability? Now, we should point out that National Security Advisor Michael Waltz was responsible for initiating that other signal chat that mistakenly included Jeff Goldberg of The Atlantic. This one was initiated by Secretary Hegseth. So we should point that out just for clarity.
You know, you should, Katie, but let me just say it here. You're not supposed to have those calls over signal, no matter who initiated them. It doesn't matter who picked up the phone. It's when you're talking about plans to bomb another country, that's like really secret information. And that is supposed to be done in what are called skiffs, in secure places, over secure lines. I have seen things, heard things that are so much less down that line that have to always be done with all of the security safeguards in place. And Pete Hegseth, that we know of, has twice violated that.
Will there be accountability, though, Elizabeth? That's the big question. Many people are calling for him to be fired, but will that happen? It didn't happen before. Why do you think it might happen now?
You know, let's face it. The Trump administration is not big on accountability, and I think that's no surprise. We have a convicted felon sitting in the White House, and someone whose first act, once he was sworn in, was to issue pardons to 1,500 people who had taken part in an insurrection, including an insurrection, a riot that had destroyed property at the U.S. Capitol and resulted in the deaths of police officers. So accountability is clearly not high on Donald Trump's list. Nonetheless, he is at least a little sensitive to people across the country saying enough We're not going to do this no more. And I think that's what's happening right now. Democrats, Republicans, independents saying this guy has to go, has to go. And
What
so
Republicans have
that's the
been
best
saying that?
chance. Well, we've heard a little bit, right? You're getting a little bit of pushback. I think of this at the moment as cracks in the red wall that Republicans in the House, in the Senate have bowed down to Donald Trump from the day he got elected. Anything he wanted was always good. Everybody he nominated was always terrific. Didn't want to hear anything bad. Nothing, nothing, nothing. But with trade, with the question about whether or not you're going to obey court orders, and now with Hegseth, you're starting to see the cracks appear.
You're part of a bipartisan resolution to repeal Donald Trump's global tariffs, along with people like Rand Paul, Tim Kaine, Chuck Schumer. Tell us where that stands and what impact it might have.
So remember, we'll have to be wonky for just a minute here. We've got two things going on with tariffs. First, the economists have told us, Wall Street has told us, and is telling us pretty firmly right now, even Jerome Powell, head of the Fed, have all said either we're moving toward recession with these tariffs or we're already into a recession because of them, driving up costs for families all across this country and driving up unemployment simultaneously. In other words, who really pays the price in a recession? Family by family by family. They pay more at the grocery store, pay more at the gas pump, and more people lose their jobs. So this is bad economic territory to be in. Why does the president have the power to come out one day and declare 10% tariffs, then 54% tariffs, then on China 145% tariffs? That's not what the president's job actually is. Only Congress authorized any president to do this in a state of emergency. And the idea behind this bill, which was passed a long time ago, was like if we're at war, right? And we need to be able to get tariffs in place quickly. President is authorized to do that. But the law specifically says it can be rolled back. That is, Congress can just say, not an emergency right now. And if Congress says that in what's called a resolution, we're done. President loses the authority to do exactly what he's doing right now. So Ron Wyden and I have the bill to get the resolution, and it will get a vote in the next couple of weeks. And if it carries the House and the Senate, then Donald Trump will lose his ability to do these up, down, in, out, sideways tariffs. Will we get Republicans? Here's the thing, Katie. It's now a time when Republicans all across this country are actually going to have to stand up and go on the record. They're not going to be able to avoid it. Either they see what's happening to the economy, they know what will happen to families, the way that Trump is heading this economy. Either they will decide, no, their number one job is still to bow down to Donald Trump no matter what, or their job is to stand up for the American people. And that's going to be the vote that's going to occur in the next couple of weeks.
Not to get wonkier, but aren't tariffs a form of taxation, Elizabeth? And doesn't the power reside with Congress? And why aren't people making that point?
So it is true. The power resides with Congress to set tariffs. And look, Donald Trump's form of doing tariffs is the worst possible in terms of driving up costs. He has made it on virtually every country, on virtually every product they sell, which drives up prices all across the board. Explain to me, Katie, what is the emergency in our trade relationship with Belgium? What is the emergency right now in our trade relationship with many, many countries around the world? We have, if you want to do something on trade, you want to make changes on trade, you got to have a specific goal in mind, And you've got to have a way that you want to bring those tariffs in. For example, to be able to develop a certain kind of manufacturing here in the United States, and you've got enough time to do it, and so on and so forth. But that's not what Donald Trump is doing. Indeed, here's the thing that I think nobody's talking about enough, and that is the cost of uncertainty. Those tariffs will raise prices across the board. Jerome Powell, head of the Fed, has already said so, because they are so across the board and affect everything. But the fact that we've had 25% tariffs, then no tariffs, then 10% tariffs, then no tariffs, 54% tariffs, then no tariffs, this red light, green light, and even now, he said he has suspended the higher tariffs for 90 days. Nobody can plan against that. There's no business in this country or anywhere in the world that can say, okay, now's a time for me to invest $100 million in building this new plant, or even a few $1,000,000 in going out and buying a lot of new tools to increase my productivity, or investing in hiring a new team and getting them educated to do this part of business I want to do. Nobody makes investments in the teeth of that kind of uncertainty. So even if Donald Trump said tomorrow, woke up and said, oh, I've now paid attention to what people are saying, I'm going to drop the tariffs, so long as he has the power to wave his magic wand and turn those tariffs back on, everybody in our country is paying a price. And
so what are the ramifications though of that kind of unpredictability, if you will? You say people can't prepare. So what are the consequences of not being able to prepare?
Well, the consequences are terrible for our economy. It means there are going to be more people who are laid off. It means we're going to slow down on productivity, because people are not going to make, investors are not going to make the kinds of investments that take a year or 5 years or 15 years to be able to get back the return on investment. There's a real price to pay. And if you look at Wall Street, it's just kind of one visible measure of that. You're watching the stock in company after company after company go down because people are saying, how are they going to expand? How are they going to get more productive? How are they going to sell more? And of course, there's another part to this. Consumers look at it. You know, consumers are the engine of our economy, the engine of the worldwide economy. Everybody wants to get to that American consumer because we buy a lot of stuff. But when there's a lot of economic uncertainty, consumer confidence just goes all the way down, just completely collapses. And that is what's happened, Katie. Right now, consumers are expecting much higher prices. They are more worried about unemployment, and that causes retrenchment, causes them to hold back and not to spend as much money. And then, can I layer one more problem into this?
Sure.
Okay, so we've got the tariffs. Then we've got the chaos that's Donald Trump. The third part is the corruption. Part of what has given us a strong economy for literally for centuries has been that we run a pretty honest game here. That is, our officials don't take bribes. They don't pick this one as opposed to that one because they made political donations. Look, there's some problems at the margins, but that's generally what you rely on. When there's a lot of chaos in the system around something like tariffs, it leaves open the possibility for Donald Trump to do exactly what he did. So right in the middle of these high tariffs, he said, everybody's going to have at least 10%, China's going to have 145%, and there will be no exceptions. They're going to apply to everyone. And then a day later, he said, I talked to Tim Cook, and I'm going to say, well, Apple products get an exception. So Tim Cook put $1 million into Donald Trump's inauguration campaign or inauguration events. He has come, he has basically visited with Donald Trump. Who knows what else has happened? But the point is, now one big company gets a special break, but nobody else. None of the medium-sized companies, none of the small companies, they don't have that kind of access to the president. And look how that undermines confidence overall. It's no longer an economy where the person who produces the best product or the cheapest product or the best service is the one that grows and prospers. No, it's the one who has the most political connection.
I think they call that crony capitalism, right,
Crony
Elizabeth?
capitalism. And you know what? Donald Trump did that in his first term. So Trump Enterprises is down in Argentina. They're trying to get recognition of their trademark, and there's a lot of trouble back and forth. What does Donald Trump do? He lowers the tariff for that one country, and 4 days later, that one country says, oh, now we'll go ahead and recognize your trademark. This is just corruption, not even well hidden from public view. It's pretty much out there. And corruption is like a cancer on an economy. It just, over time, just saps power and energy out of that economy. And every single American ultimately pays for it.
Speaking of corruption, I know that you have called for an investigation into insider trading because in the middle of this red light, green light tariff debate, Donald Trump actually put on Truth Social. Now is a great time to buy. Tell me about the status of that investigation and if you believe there's clear evidence that insider trading took place.
Well, the most obvious evidence is the fact that there appears to be an uptick in price, meaning more people were trying to buy just shortly before the public announcement, in which anybody can buy at that point. And that's enough to trigger an investigation, particularly under the circumstances when one person is driving the market. It's appropriate to say, so did he personally benefit from this? Members of his family, his inner circle, members of their family. This is the kind of thing that we always investigate when there's been this kind of upheaval in a market, and inside information is clearly a part of what's going on. Remember, the problems we're seeing right now are not like 2008 in the sense that in 2008, it was all those bad mortgages that for years had been fed into the system, and then finally too much risk and the whole system toppled over. 2020, it's a pandemic that's being felt around the world, and we're watching supply chains freeze up and people can't go into work. Remember that on the day Donald Trump was sworn into office this time, it's a strong economy and all of the signs are go. Right? Inflation seems to be coming down, is down. Unemployment is down. That economy is humming and GDP is growing. And now one man, Donald Trump, has totally turned that around. So part of what we have to ask is, in the machinations back and forth, is he helping himself, his buddies, and his family? But also it's what he's doing to the rest of the economy and how much everyone else is paying for the chaos and corruption that he's generating.
I want to ask you about his recent attacks on the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell. Trump said he's been moving too slowly to lower interest rates. He's threatened to fire him. He posted about it on social media. And he told reporters in the Oval Office last week, if I want him out, he'll be out there real fast, believe me. Can you explain to everyone watching why this isn't normal?
Yeah, so let's start in 1863. So back in 1863, we're in the middle of a civil war. And what the Congress and Abe Lincoln figure out is, we got to have some banking regulators because these banks are getting very, very unsteady, and we need financing to be more reliable. So we built our country built the Office of the Controller of the Currency. It's called the OCC, and this is the bank regulator. And here's the insight, Katie. Back then we said, you know what? We're going to have this bank regulator. We want them funded not through Congress, Because if they're funded through Congress and some donor, some big bank back in your home state puts pressure on the elected official will turn around and put it on the financial regulator. And then the financial regulator won't be making decisions that the financial regulator believes are in the best interests of our economy and our country, but will be under political pressure. So that's the baseline. Every single financial regulator that this country has put in place since then, the FDIC that insures your banks, the OCC that's still there, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the financial regulator for the credit unions, and the Fed, all are independent of politics as much as we can make them. And the Fed explicitly, the President of the United States does not have the power to fire the head of the Fed. If he tries, two things are going to happen. The first one is that they're going to end up in the Supreme Court, because I believe that the head of the Fed, to protect the Fed into the future, will fight it. But the second is it will tank the markets. It will cause the markets to crash. And the reason for that is it will be one more that decisions are being made based on politics rather than on someone's best judgment about the economics. We want those financial regulators insulated from politics as much as humanly possible. And again, I say this because the consequences of pushing this country into recession are felt household by household, family by family, in those higher prices and higher risk of unemployment.
So many of my followers wanted me to ask you, can Donald Trump legally fire Jerome Powell?
No.
Would that stop him from getting rid of him?
Well, look, he can't legally fire the folks at the FTC, the individual commissioners at the FTC, but he claims to have done it. Now, to their credit, the two Democrats who are on this, remember, bipartisan, Democrat and Republican, at the Federal Trade Commission, have said basically he can't do it and I'm not fired. And they're in court right now. But it is the reminder. Donald Trump indicates when he does this that he doesn't feel bound by law. He's clearly operating differently from any president we've had before. He puts himself above the law. And right now, that's being tested in court. But this is a real threat to all of us, whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, an independent, libertarian, you pay no attention to politics. We have a constitution that says Congress writes the laws and enacts them. The administration is supposed to administer those laws, and the courts are supposed to make sure that the administration follows those laws. Donald Trump is basically saying to Congress, I'm not going to follow the laws you wrote. I'll fire the people I want to fire or whatever. And the question is, will he obey the courts when they tell him you're not allowed to do that?
Well,
And
it doesn't seem like he is. It doesn't seem like he is so far, does it? I mean, the court said that this Kilmar Abrego Garcia needs to be returned to the United States. The president of El Salvador basically said, I'm not going to do that. Donald Trump isn't compelling him to do that. I mean, isn't that a clear indication that he is not going to follow the rule of law, or he is not going to listen to what the judiciary branch says?
It is an indication. And by the way, here, I want to give a shout out to my good friend, Senator Chris Van Hollen, who just went down to El Salvador and met with the man who is being held, and showing the importance of fighting back. But let's go back to our earlier part of the conversation about cracks in the wall. Senator Kennedy, a Republican from Louisiana, just said yesterday, whoa, we have to bring back this man from El Salvador, and it is important for the President of the United States to follow the law. So there's another crack in the wall saying, at least the way I read it, there's at least one Republican senator standing up saying, I still abide by the Constitution of the United States. And
many of those people might not have got, many of those people didn't get due process though, right? It's just not this one
exactly right.
individual.
The focus is on this one, but you're exactly right, Katie. And that's why it's so important. Because if Donald Trump can disappear Abrego Garcia off the sidewalks in the United States, he can disappear you or me or anyone else. And that's really the point here. Chris Van Hollen made this point clearly. He said, look, I'm not here to defend, to have a factual argument about who this man is. I'm here to say that in the United States, nobody gets disappeared without a chance to get in front of a court. It's called due process of law, to say, whoa, they've got the wrong person here, wrong name, not me, don't have the right facts. Because in this particular case, the government, the federal government, has already admitted, oh, this was a mistake. And all of the talk about who this guy is and Donald Trump's claiming he's a gang member and so on, they're not bringing that into court. They're not offering evidence in court. This is all just talk to try to keep people in Donald Trump's camp. The bottom line is due process is there to protect all of us. And we need to bring this man back. We need to bring them all back, right, to get the due process they are entitled to make sure that nobody gets disappeared off the streets of the United States of America.
I want to turn to Social Security and the Social Security Administration because you're a ranking member of the Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs and a member of the Senate Finance Committee. On Friday, you published an op-ed on Fox News about the Trump administration's gutting of the SSA, the Social Security Administration. So what has been done already to that administration, Elizabeth, that is a cause for concern?
So let me just start by reminding everybody that the administration on its own cannot cut Social Security benefits. If they want to cut Social Security benefits, they got to come to Congress to do it. So what Donald Trump and his co-president Elon Musk have done is they found a backdoor way to cut benefits. And the backdoor way is basically to administer the system in a way that drives up the number of errors, that is, mistakes that you don't get what you are legally entitled to, and make it more and more impossible to get those errors corrected. And look, that over time means a lot of money that people are legally entitled to that they don't get. I always start this conversation by saying, damn it, Social Security is not charity. It is something people earned all of their lives. Every single paycheck they earned from the time, for some folks, they were 14 years old, a piece of that paycheck has gone into Social Security on the understanding, the rock solid, no matter what, take it to the bank understanding that for sure, when the time comes that you have to rely on Social Security, it will be there for you as promised. And Donald Trump and Elon Musk have tried to get rid of that. And the way they've done it is they have tried shutting down Social Security offices so you can't go in for problems. For a while, they were trying to shut down the phones entirely so you couldn't call if you had a problem. And they are trying to fire allegedly about half of all the people who work at the Social Security Administration. And understand, Social Security Administration was already understaffed. These are good people who are trying to help folks who depend on their Social Security. And here is Elon Musk has been leading the charge on this. A man who makes $8 million a day just on his federal contracts with our government, $8 million a day. He's trying to cut benefits for people who on average make $65 a day. And why? So that they can grease the skids to give more tax handouts to billionaires and billionaire corporations and pay for it on the backs of seniors and their Social Security, little kids and public education, babies and healthcare, and promises we make to our veterans. That's the realignment they're trying to make happen in the United States of America.
I have to ask you about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau because, Elizabeth, you were instrumental in establishing that. What will be the fallout there from Musk's Doge cuts, and why is this entity so important in your view?
So back before the 2008 crash, we had all these consumer protection laws, but they were scattered in a bunch of different agencies, and frankly, nobody enforced them. One of the consequences of that is a bunch of lying, cheating mortgages got spread all over this country. Risk built up in the system. People got cheated. They defaulted on their mortgages and brought down our economy and brought down the worldwide economy over it. Lesson to be learned is that if we're going to have just kind of a level playing field here for consumers, you got to have a cop on the beat who actually knows the law and is willing to get out there and enforce it. It's not any fancier than that. So we gathered up these laws from all the different agencies and built one agency that just had one job, and that is to enforce those laws so we have a level playing field for consumers, so they don't get cheated when they have a credit card, a checking account, a Venmo account, a mortgage, a student loan, just kind of any of those basic financial transactions. So we get the little agency passed into law. It's part of Dodd-Frank. Get it set up, and it's been operational for about a dozen years. In the dozen years, it has discovered about $20 billion in fraud. I mean, just cheating people. And it's everything from little tiny frauds, I say little tiny, but it matters, that they kind of nipped a few bucks off your checking account for some fee you didn't owe, all the way, you see them, $25,000 that you made in a down payment on a home and it went into escrow and now nobody will give it back to you when the deal fell through. So a big range here. $20 billion. And you know what the consumer agency has done? They have made every one of those companies give the money back to the consumer they cheated. They run a hotline. They've helped more than 200 million Americans. In other words, it's government that works for people. So what Elon Musk has done, and by the way, government that has recovered so much more than what it costs, and it's like the other bank regulators, financed outside the tax system. So it's not a tax part of the taxing authority. So anyway, Elon Musk comes in and decides he's just going to shut it down. In fact, he posts on X CFPB, the initials for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB RIP, with a gravestone emoji. Man, that's serious policy making. And tries to shut it down. Now, it's all in court, but ask yourself, why is Elon Musk going after the CFPB? Because he's going after Social Security to help grease the skids for the tax break. Over at the CFPB, you know Elon Musk has X, the social media platform, millions of people on that. He wants to start something called X Money, which is all of your financial stuff online. And he wants to be able to link it up with your social media stuff to monetize your social media, your financial transactions, every part of it. And who would be the regulator for his X Money? You want to make a guess? Come on, Katie. The CFPB. So he wants to saw off the CFPB. Now, the courts have told him, you can't just shut the thing down. So now what they're trying to do is, well, okay, how about if there's nobody here doing the work? And that's where they're in court right now in this fight. But once again, Katie, what all of this is about is just this tiny handful of people who want to profit, billionaires who want to profit, and they want to do it on the backs of everyone else. Because you know how this affects everybody who's listening to us right now. if you have a checking account and you get cheated by your bank, there's no cop on the beat right now. If you get cheated on Venmo, no cop on the beat right now. If Zelle helps steal your money, no cop on the beat right now. If somebody won't give you back your escrow money on your mortgage, no cop on the beat, no cop on the beat, no cop on the beat. And by the way, you don't have to take my word for it. We had Jerome Powell in a hearing shortly after Elon Musk had stepped in, and I asked him the question in the hearing, who's out there enforcing the federal laws to keep American families from getting cheated? And he said, no one. So this is one more example of trying to twist around our country so it works even better for a billionaire like Elon Musk or a billionaire like Tim Cook, we were talking about earlier on the tariffs, for a handful of billionaires, Donald Trump and Donald Trump's immediate family, to benefit a handful of billionaires, and everybody else in this country pays for it.
A handful of billionaires who donated to Donald Trump.
Bingo.
Right? I mean, not just any old billionaire.
That's right. Not
real
random billionaires.
quo.
That's exactly right. The billionaires who actually invested. Remember, Elon Musk put about a third of $1 billion into helping Donald Trump get elected.
And now they want payback.
That's right. That's exactly right. And that's the question that faces our nation right now. When historians write about this moment, they're going to talk about this is the moment when the question up for grabs is this country going to work even better for a handful of billionaires who get to make all the decisions to benefit themselves? Or are we going to reassert our democracy, Democrats and Republicans, and we're going to say, no, we are rule of law. We still have a Congress that writes the laws, and the job of the administration is to administer those laws as written, to follow the law, to follow what courts say, not to fire people when you're not legally able to do this, not to shut down programs that you have no legal right to do this. Do we have a country where our government is actually following the law? And that was just not an open question until Donald Trump and the last 3 months. And to me, this is why I'm in the fight, Katie, because this is the fight for our country and for our children, for our grandchildren. Are we a country that just thinks the only people worth benefiting are billionaires? Or are we a country that thinks there's dignity in everyone and that everybody ought to have a fighting chance to build a future?
And are we a country of laws, right? And
Yep.
and a constitution. One day I want to talk to you about Harvard and everything that's going on in higher education since you taught at the law school there, but we'll do it another time. Senator Elizabeth Warren, thank you so much for talking with me as always.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's always good to visit with you.